Who do you think is winning this position? It is white to move. Both pawns are on their starting squares, with the white pawn going up and the black pawn going down. Well, let's see who wins first. Now, if you thought about moving the pawn all the way till the end to try to make a queen, and you were wondering if the black king is able to stop the pawn, all you have to do is to think about the square rule. The square rule, you just have to draw a square, from like, let's see, from this position all the way until the edge of the board, and then you draw another line until it meets the rank of the pawn, and then you continue the square. Now, if the enemy king is inside of the square, black will be able to stop your pawn. And if it was outside, for example, anywhere else outside of the box, you will not be able to stop your pawn. This is very simple. The same thing applies to this pawn. You take a diagonal, you draw a diagonal on the exact same diagonal, same color, like this, and then another line until it meets the file of the pawn, and then you continue the square. If the enemy king is inside of the box, it will be able to stop the pawn. So now let's test it out. So a4, king e4, a5, king d6, king d5, a6, king c6, a7, king b7, and then he's able to stop it. And the same thing applies to the black pawn. So now, when thinking about this position, we know it is not a pawn move, because if we move the pawn, he can just move the king and stop us. But you might say, whenever we push the pawn in many of our endgames, we only like to move our pawns. We don't think about stopping the pawn, we only think about attacking. So what if black decided to play the move c5, trying to make a queen of his own? Well, then we play a5, c4, and you might be saying that, hold on, white makes a queen first with the check. So white is winning this, right? Well, not entirely. Because let's say, if the black king went anywhere else except the move king to e2, black is losing. Let's say king to f2. King to f2, you can play a simple move, which is a queen a2. Pin the pawn, the king moves away, and then you take it. And now this is a winning endgame. Okay, let's think about what is going to happen after king to e3. King to e3, we cannot play king here to stop, we cannot play queen c6 to stop the pawn. We cannot play queen here, queen a3, for example, a check to stop the pawn, because he can play king d2, and now he's gonna promote the pawn on the next move, and it's gonna be a draw. So the only move in this position that wins for white after this blunder on e3, queen to g2. We're stopping the king from going here to support the pawn promotion. Now you might say, what? He can just promote the queen. Well, no. The reason we played queen to g2 is that we can play queen to g5 check, and after the king moves away, we take his queen. That's why he cannot promote. And after he plays king to d3, trying to go king c3 and king b2 to help promote the pawn, now we have to play the only move again, which is queen to g5. Because look, whenever your opponent has a king and a pawn, and the king is so close to the pawn, is ready to promote, all you have to do to win this position is to put your queen on the promotion square of the pawn. So for example, he plays king c3, trying to play king b2 and support the pawn push. You just have to play queen c1, and now he is never threatening the pawn promotion. He can move his king, and all you have to do now is to get your king closer and closer, and then after he moves, you take the pawn, and this is a winning endgame. I'm 100% sure you can win this. But of course, if you played anything else, like for example, oh sorry, let's just continue this. And if you play the move king to e2, it is not winning. It's not winning for white, because we have no way to stop the pawn from promoting. We can play some checks, and checks all over the place. It will not work. After king here check, he's going to go here, and we're going to keep giving him check. So it's not going to work. So now we know it is not a pawn push, because even if he pushed the pawn or he moved the king, it's going to be ending up in a draw, right? So now we know it's not a pawn move, it's going to be a king move. But now we have all these moves. Which one is good? Whenever you're playing a game of chess, don't ever think about going back for no reason whatsoever. I know you might not think about this, you're only thinking about attacking, and that's really good. But sometimes when we get so low on time, we start to move whatever. But no, every move matters. Because in this position, the most common move, or the most common sense move, are either king to f6 or king to f5. You're trying to get into the action. Now, let's see what happens after king to f6. King to f6 is actually bad. You know why? Because it loses the opposition. It allows black to get in like this, and now it's shouldering the white king from ever defending the white pawn and from attacking this pawn on c7. So we play the move king to e6, and then he plays c5. We can now play king to d5 to stop the pawn, and whenever we try to, for example, promote, he can push again, and I don't think that white can make, well, I guess it also works for both of us, you know. It's also going to be a draw, but it's not going to be like this. So hold on. So after this king to after the king to e6, there is this move king to d4, because if we push the pawn, it's going to be the exact same position as before. And if you try to get to the pawn, now we play this, and we're going to be in time to promote. And if he, for example, play the move a4, we get closer and closer, and then whenever he gets closer to here, we play the move c5, he pushes and then we take, and he's not able to stop the pawn. That's why it's best for you, whenever you're playing an endgame, is to oppose the enemy king by playing king to f5. You need to keep shouldering the king away from defending his pawn and from attacking your pawn whenever it pushes away from the center of the board. Now he plays, of course, he cannot play the move c5, he cannot push the pawn, he cannot push the pawn, because both of them are in the square. Alright? So now, after this c5 move, it's bad because of the move king to e5. He cannot defend the pawn. If he pushes, he's going to lose it. And for example, if he played king to e3, you're going to play king to d5. He cannot defend the pawn, and if you played king to e3, you can just take. And after he goes here, he needs the b4 square in order to stop your pawn. But after king to c3, you can play a4, and he cannot stop you, and you will win the game. So after king to f5, we also now know that it's not a pawn move, it is a king move. So he plays king to e6. After king to e6, again, it's very important to keep shouldering the king and stopping him from entering the other part of the board. So you play king to e5. Because you need to stop him from defending, and you need to stop him from attacking the pawn once it, reaches a5 or a4. Now, if you play c5, the exact same thing happens. You're going to win the pawn. So he cannot push the pawn. He plays king to d3. Now, again, the exact same thing. Shoulder the king. Here, there's a very, very beautiful trick for black. Because if he plays, for example, king c3, we can just play king to c5. Keep shouldering the king. Now, he cannot attack the pawn. If he pushes, for example, c6, we just have a4. He cannot stop us. We're going to make a queen and win the game. And if you play king b2, then just a4, and he cannot stop us from promoting to a queen as well. But in this position, other than playing king to c3, he can play c6 check, sacrificing his own pawn. Now, the only thing you need to know in an endgame is opposition of the kings. Whoever has the opposition will be able to win or draw a position. If you take the pawn, you're allowing black to have the opposition, and you cannot defend your pawn anymore, because now the black king is shouldering you from defending your own pawn. You play a4, and now he can play b4, because your king is not stopping this or securing the square. And after you move the king, you're going to lose the pawn, and it's going to be a draw. That's why after this check, don't ever take any kind of check. Never. If you have the opportunity to keep this, shouldering the king away, you should do that. You don't take a free piece or a free pawn. He plays king to c3, and after the move a4, he cannot stop us, and we're going to make a queen. Is there anything else that you can see in this position that actually wins for black, or gets the draw? No, none of those. But you have to see the move king to f5, king to e5, king to d5, king to c5 to secure the b4 square, because it is the only square for black to get in to stop the pawn on a4 from, he can take it or stop it from going to a5. And it's not going for this kind of race, because it actually no one's win this unless black makes a blunder. So this was the video. Thank you so much for watching.